I think people can kind of catch on to what you're trying to get at, what you're trying to do, and you need to get another solution because it's not working. Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. The New York Knicks. There is a lot to talk about here. Why are the Knicks always trying to target everybody in a trade rumor or free agency? I know you want to win a championship, but just be patient and develop your talent. The grass is not always greener on the other side. They're always so quick to jump to any kind of new shiny toy that they see that it always hurts their development and their young players and just hurts the overall long-term plan. You need to, like I said, develop young players, be patient, build a long-term plan. You can't just always buy and get new players. That's not how it works. You can't always build a championship team that way. I understand that running an organization is hard and winning championships is not easy. I understand that. But at a certain point, when you're making the same mistakes and the same moves over and over again, I think people can kind of catch on to what you're trying to get at, what you're trying to do, and you need to get another solution because it's not working. Like I said, I'm never going to be the one to talk unfairly or critique somebody or a team just because, I have nothing better to do. But like I said, it's fairly obvious when you're making the same moves that something needs to be changed because clearly it has not worked out in quite a while now because the Knicks have not been good for a while. Mitchell Robinson is really good. If he could just stay out of foul trouble, we could see his development skyrocket. And RJ obviously was a rookie, so he showed some potential. He had an up and down year. And we'll see next year and the next few years how he develops. But he has a lot of potential there, so you can't just count him out yet either. So I just wanted to start the video off with that briefing. Have to talk to the Knicks organization for a second. Listen, if you need some help in the scouting department, helping develop players' diets and nutrition, anything, I'm your girl. Let me help. I know basketball. I know about the NBA. So anyway, let's talk about all the trade rumors and free agency signings that the Knicks have been associated with in the recent days. When I say recent days, I mean every day for the last however many days. So first, let's rule out Donovan Mitchell. He was one of the people they were talking about a little while ago. They possibly might go to the Knicks. Now, there have been reports that came out that Donovan Mitchell, the Jazz, are extending him and finalizing a plan for a max contract. And it seems, apparently, according to reports, unlikely that Donovan Mitchell will leave. Now, whatever he does, that's his choice. If he wants to leave, fine. That doesn't bother me. Do whatever you want to do. Even if he does leave, I feel like it's unlikely that he comes to the Knicks. So in this scenario, I'm just gonna rule him out as not even an option, to be honest. But obviously we have to mention it because he's one of the players, one of the many players that have been associated with the Knicks and possibly targeted by the Knicks. So now let's talk about Paul George. So this rumor actually I heard today, and when I heard this, I was like, this is so ridiculous. It's not ridiculous because Paul George is a player. It's ridiculous because every single day there's a new trade rumor. Like I said earlier, I'm not trying to unfairly critique anybody or any team. I get it, it's hard, but you can't want a player every single day. It's not gonna work. You're not gonna get all of them, first of all. And second of all, people and players are the same because players are people. Sometimes people forget that. They are actual people. Players, like people who are not celebrities or stars, they want to feel wanted, they want to feel special, and they want to feel, like there's some kind of bond going on. And if you're recruiting a player every single day, they're going to be like, oh, well, first of all, why am I going to sign here? Because you guys are mad desperate. You'll sign anybody who will say yes. And who said you're going to even build a championship contender around me? Because we've seen, how well the Knicks have been the last however many years. I think they need to be more particular about who they want and not just everybody, but maybe some of these reports are made up and the Knicks didn't even say this. Who knows? But I'm sure some of them are true, and at least more than one of them are true, and more than one is enough. We don't need to hear multiple reports about you want this player and this player. It's just not a good look. You just can't look desperate and like you want every single player because it hasn't been working out so far in your favor. And to be honest, Paul George would be cool with the Knicks, but first of all, I don't know if he'd be committed here long term, and I know that's what the Knicks organization probably wants, a long-term commitment. And also, if you're just bringing in Paul George is good. Like I said, Mitchell Robinson developing nicely. RJ has potential, and we see what everybody else, how the roster will fill out and how everybody else plays. But that's not a championship contending team. So you're signing Paul George just to sign him. Maybe he'll sell some more tickets, get some more, revenue in. But besides that, a few more wins, obviously, because Paul George is talented. But, you're not going to win a championship, so it's kind of just like a lateral move to me. I don't really get it. It doesn't make much sense. Unless Paul George says he's going to sign 5 years, But even then, if you don't have a plan to sign other players, then it just, again, it's a lateral move to me. So I don't really see why the Knicks would do this or why they should do this. And also, I think I said sign throughout this whole segment on Paul George. They have to trade for him. He's not a free agent. So they would have to give up stuff to get Paul George. So it's even more of a lateral move or less of a lateral move. Whatever way makes sense. Whatever way means it's like even worse than a lateral move, that's what that is. Now let's talk about Chris Paul. Now Chris Paul is another player that has been rumored for a while to be associated with the Knicks, that the Knicks are targeting him, they want him. And a report came out, I think today or yesterday, very recently, that OKC would want Kevin Knox included in the deal and a first-round pick for Chris Paul. Kevin Knox and a first-round pick to get Chris Paul from a strictly trade standpoint, business move, that makes sense. You do it because, you know, the first-round pick, you don't know what that's going to be. Kevin Knox, you know, nice young player, but Chris Paul is Chris Paul. And it definitely will help your team get more wins next year. Maybe even get into the playoffs because we saw what OKC did, even though people thought they were a lottery team. So I think Chris Paul may be able to make some noise with the team a little bit, you know, get them to the first round. There'd probably be a first round exit if they made the playoffs. And, you know, like I said earlier with Paul George, similar, you know, sell some more tickets, some more ad revenue, that kind of stuff. But again, in terms of an actual long-term plan, it's a lateral move again. Chris Paul's contract is up in 2 years. So unless you're building a championship team next year, which it's not going to happen realistically, then what really is the point? Because in 2 years when his contract is up, actually, take that back. His contract is up in 2021 if he exercises his player option, but if he opts in, then his contract is up in 2022. So 1 or 2 years, depending on what the free agency landscape looks like, depending on where he wants to go. But let's just say 2 years for this standpoint. Let's just say he signs in for 2 years. Are you really going to build a championship team within that time? So then it's kind of like, again, a lateral move because you gave up Kevin Knox and a first round pick. Not like the biggest deal in the entire world, like you gave up your whole team, but at the same time, you gave it up for 2 years of Chris Paul and then you're not going to re-sign him and then you're in the same spot. You're still at square one, so what really is the point there again? Again, the solution is develop your young talent. Scout right, you know, draft correctly, which obviously drafting correctly is very hard to do. I understand that because people can look like a star and then they're not a star, and people could look like they're not going to be a star but then they are a star. So I get all that, but you need to work on that area first, and then the Knicks will become a more attractive target destination for people because they'll be like, ooh, that organization is run really nicely. They're willing to spend money because that's something about the Knicks that you can't say. They're always willing to spend money. So they're willing to spend money to get what I need and what I want. And they're developing a nice culture. They have nice young players. They have a good front office. So that's really the areas you need to work on. You got to work on the bottom level first, and then you can work on getting those stars. And now we also obviously got to talk about Victor Oladipo. Now out of everybody in this list, I think Victor Oladipo is the most realistic option for a few reasons that I'll get into. Now, multiple reports have came out that Victor Oladipo wants to leave, like all the time, constantly. I'm hearing reports that he wants to leave, but then he came out and said, I don't know where these reports are coming from. I never said that. So who's telling the truth? Who knows? Doesn't really matter. We'll find out when free agency happens and where he ends up going. If he stays in Indiana, good for him. If he leaves, good for him. Do whatever he wants. That's not the point. His actions will dictate what he wanted to do. Now, as for the Knicks, Victor Oladipo is still in his prime. Yes, he's had some injuries, so that could be a little bit scary, but he has shown a lot of potential and he can be really good when he's healthy and on the court. Though he's maybe a little bit past the timeline of RJ Mitchell-Robinson, he's still in that same area pretty much. So he fits the timeline pretty nicely, especially if they sign him to a long, you know, four-year deal. Then they have him and they have 4 years to figure out what they're going to do, how they're going to sign people, and how they're going to build a championship contending team within those 4 years. And to build a championship team within 4 years is not the easiest thing to do, but it's definitely not impossible. Especially when you have young talent like RJ Mitchell-Robinson, as well as a lottery pick in the draft that could be someone really special. So like I said, this is probably the most realistic option and the one that makes the most sense for the Knicks. So I would keep my eye out for this because this could be a positive move for them. And then lastly, we gotta talk about Fred Vanvleet. Now, I've said this in a previous video that I think Fred VanVleet's gonna re-sign in Toronto from what I see on the court, because that's all I know. He seems happy. Toronto is a very well-run organization and they're obviously kind of in contention for a championship. Obviously not this year, but maybe they'll sign someone in free agency. They're definitely a top playoff team and they play defense very well. They're great on offense. Nick Nurse is a great coach. So I think that he's happy there, and I don't see him having a reason to leave, especially if they pay him the money he deserves. However, a report came out that the Knicks want to target him, and the Knicks have a lot of money, so they could give him the max contract, and maybe he'll go for that. I don't know. I honestly don't think so. I think he's just going to stay in Toronto, and maybe they'll sign another piece, like I said, and then be a championship contender next year. So I don't think this one's really realistic, but we had to talk about it because it was mentioned again with the Knicks. It's all right, Knicks fans. One day you guys will be good again. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and see you next time. Bye.